Who's your commander?
Good luck.
Equip.
Move to combat. Resolves.
Right.
Now, before you attack
Does
me,
anyone have an answer?
well played.
Good game.
Hello, I'm DJ, and this is the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel. We're talking about Sasaya Orochi Ascendant, budget, big mana, commander deck tech. Let's look at Sasaya and see what's going on. Sasaya Orochi Ascendant is a flip card. This is a weird one that you guys might not have seen very often. Sasaya is 1 green for a legendary snake monk, 2/3. Reveal your hand. If you have 7 or more land cards in your hand, flip Sasaya Orochi Ascendant. And you literally flip, like I know we called a lot of other cards flip cards, these are literal flip cards. The other ones are transformed, so this actually flips it around to Sasaya's Essence. Whenever a land you control is tapped for mana, add 1 mana of that type to your mana pool for each other land you control with the same name. This is a crazy legendary enchantment on a dude that has this amazing activation. Let's break it down and find out what is going on with this card and what kind of deck we can build. Let's talk about each of the steps that you need to make Sasaya good. By the way, if you like the sound of this deck and want to win it, check out my Patreon. There's a link in the description. The first thing is that you need to actually flip Sasaya to get to this powerful legendary enchantment side. And you do that by having 7 or more lands in your hand. That's a lot. That's kind of difficult to achieve actually, because you want to be playing the lands out of your hand, putting them onto the battlefield. So maybe you need to engineer a way to get more lands into your hand. There are cards out there that do this, so maybe with the right support, Sasaya can flip at turn 4 or 5. That's pretty good. But when Sasaya does flip, that legendary enchantment in your command zone is so powerful. Just 5 lands. You tap them, they don't just produce 1 mana, they'll produce 5 each, 25 mana. And that's not even considering any other ramp. When you have 6 mana, it gets to 36, 7 mana, 49. It gets exponentially large because with each additional land, all of your lands tap for more mana. So the key to this deck is simple. Play your commander, flip it reliably, use the mana, and win. That's going to be an amazing deck. And one thing that's really good about this deck is that it is a budget deck. This deck tech started off as an experiment to try and make a beginner deck. Maybe I can craft something that's budget and powerful and really reliable that new players could pick up and really enjoy playing. And so I went to the EDH rec page for green staples, and I found that a lot of the cards were crazy over budget. In fact, I looked at the top 100 cards that EDH Rec has listed, and the average price of a card on that top 100 list is $7.33. That's not something that most beginners are going to be excited about playing. They're like, wait, I need 100 cards, and the average card on this average list is $7.33? Yeah, it's very daunting. Some of them are really expensive and some of them are cheaper, but that's a lot of money. And so I realized that the popularity of those cards has driven up the prices, and there's a lot of inexpensive gems that have been pushed out of the data. Then I'm thinking, man, where do you go if the #1 resource isn't there for you for helping you build your deck? So with that, we need more inspiration in the budget realm. And the reason why Sasaya is so awesomely budget is because it relies heavily on using basics. That's a big step. And instead of a lot of the classic green ramp cards, this employs some fixing and some getting lands to hand instead of on the battlefield. Gaia's Bounty, Journey of Discovery, and Nissa's Pilgrimage. All of these cost 3 mana, and they get you 2 forests to your hand, they get you 2 basic lands to your hand, and they could get you up to 3 basic lands to your hand. Getting lands to your hand provides fixing. It helps you hit your land drops, but it is not ramp. We need to know this going in. This works great with Sasaya because you need the lands in your hand to be able to prove to your opponents, look, I have 7 lands, and then all of the magic happens. Sasaya is unlocked. But until then, you're just casting mediocre divinations. Actually, that's kind of what it is. You pay 3 mana at sorcery speed and you get 2 cards. They just happen to be lands. One other card is Seek the Horizon, 3 and a green for a sorcery, and you get 3 basic lands and put them into your hand. But now you might be seeing how this deck is coming together. We use these spells to get tons of lands into our hand, and then boom, we show off our hand, we have 7 lands, and we can see the power of a flipped Sasaya. I've talked about those numbers of mana, and yeah, it's crazy, right? That much mana? Oh my gosh. So we want to make sure that we very reliably can flip it. That means we need tons of ways to get lands to our hand. One of the best ways is Sprouting Vines. 2 and a green for an instant, search your library for a basic land card and put that card into your hand. Guess what? Sprouting Vines has Storm. So if your opponents are doing a bunch of things on their turn, playing a couple spells, Sprouting Vines can immediately get you 2, 3, 4, 5 forests straight into your hand, ready to reveal, ready to dump them onto the battlefield. And Rites of Spring is another one that gets multiple lands into your hand. You can discard any number of cards from your hand and then search your library for that many basic land cards. Oh my gosh. This basically fixes the rest of your hand. Chuck all the things that aren't forests and then go search up all the rest of them, and suddenly you have a flipped commander. There are a few creatures that do a really good job of this. Yavimaya Elder searches up 2 lands. Croson Tusker can have you cycle and search up a land, so you get to draw a card and search something up. There are a few other creatures that have a body that get a land to your hand. I picked Nissa Vastwood Seer because even though this is really pushing the budget at $650, the ability to transform into a planeswalker and really affect the board, I think, is very valuable compared to all the other cards that, I don't know, they're just not that good to have a body and search up a land. For that mana cost, I would rather get 2 lands, like with those sorceries I mentioned earlier. There's some artifacts that help us out here too. Armillary Sphere and Horizon Spellbomb, you can cash them in to get basics into your hand. But the artifacts that I'm most excited about are Thematic Compass and Journeyer's Kite, because they're repeatable. There we go. We basically play them, and then as we activate them, we get more and more lands to our hands. I like that. And then finally, we have another big payoff in this strategy in the form of some enchantments. Elfhame Sanctuary, Rowan, and Abundance. Elfhame Sanctuary reads, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may search your library for a basic land card. Reveal that card, put it in your hand. If you do, skip your draw step. So you can decide, hey, I'm gonna get a land. And that's sometimes what you need. You're like, I need to draw that last land to flip my commander. And Elfhame Sanctuary will let you do that. Same thing with Rowan. Reveal the first card you draw each turn. Whenever you reveal a basic land card this way, draw a card. You see, in a lot of decks, this might read, draw a card a third of the time. That might not be good enough for many players. But in this deck, it's more like draw a card half the time. And that's pretty good. We need forward momentum, and sometimes this will just draw us land, and that's really, really strong. Abundance also lets us switch in between needing to draw lands and needing to avoid lands, which is great once we've flipped our commander. With a deck so full of lands, it's going to be great in the late game to say, nope, non-land, and then you just go until you get a non-land. By the way, Abundance works really well with Sylvan Library, allowing you to just search up 3 cards and dodge Sylvan Library's downside. But at $23, the card drawing enchantment just doesn't make the cut. But if you do have this card, I would make sure to include this combination because it's amazing. And then also, if we want a little bit more value, Into the Wilds is an enchantment that says at the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield. The reason why it's a little bit smaller here is it doesn't help get those lands into your hand to flip your commander, but it is ramp, it is card advantage, and in a deck that has so many lands, yeah, let's just include Into the Wilds and maybe it'll ramp us into something really great. Now, I know some of you heard that I said about half of this deck is lands, and it's true. There's like 44 lands in this deck. And some of you are thinking, oh my gosh, the flood is going to be real. What is going on? How am I going to manage this? Well, hang on. I already mentioned a few cards that get around this, like the Abundance, like the Rowan, like the Into the Wilds, okay? We have other ways to pull lands out of our deck, although mostly into our hands. But we will want some other forms of card advantage. Seer Sundial's great. Landfall, pay 2, draw a card. Endless Atlas is brand new out of the newest Commander set. It's a 2-mana artifact, and for 2 mana and tap, you can draw a card. Activate this ability only if you control 3 or more lands with the same name. Guess what? You will have 3 or more lands with the same name, because I think 39 of all the lands in this deck are basic forest. Yeah, Endless Atlas is going to be online and have you drawing cards. I would love to have a tireless tracker in this deck, but it's $9. Just wait, it will be reprinted because this card is used in like every format. It's going to be in a master set pretty soon, so just hang on and you'll be able to get your copy. There's some other ways to get card advantage. Nantuko Cultivator, 3 and a green for an insect druid. It's a 2/2, but when Nantuko Cultivator comes into play, you may discard any number of land cards from your hand, put that many +1/+1 counters on Nantuko Cultivator, and draw that many cards. So this is what you play after you flipped your commander. You flip your commander over and suddenly you have all the mana you could ever need. And then what do? You play Nantuko Cultivator, you throw away all 7 of those lands, and then you get a whole new grip. And you just happened to make a 4-mana 9/9 and draw 7 cards. Yeah, crazy, right? Okay, this is just a wonderful card in this deck. It's actually pretty similar to a card like Scroll Rack, which is really good. If we're trying to assemble the 7 cards we need, Scroll Rack can scroll away some of the non-lands to try and get other lands, and then in the late game be able to shuffle those lands that are excess back into your library in order to get more action. But Scroll Rack, $52. Totally not worth it because we've got some artifacts that are even more powerful. Horn of Greed. Whenever a player plays a land, that player draws a card. This keeps our card count in our hand up high enough so we can use all of these other effects, and we will hit land drops all the time. Constantly hitting land drops, so we will be constantly drawing cards. This means we're going to be taking advantage of this effect way more than our opponents. And then we have something a little bit mean, actually very mean. 5-mana artifact called Storm Cauldron. During each player's turn, that player may put 1 additional land into play. Sounds super mean, right? Just wait. Whenever a land is tapped for mana, return that land to its owner's hand. This shuts down opponents' decks. You have no idea how frustrating it is for them to just be like, oh, I can't just pay 10 mana this turn and next turn and next turn. No, it just totally hampers the whole game. But guess what? You play Storm Cauldron, you tap a few lands, and then suddenly, boom, you got the 7 mana you need to flip your commander, and then when your lands tap for mana, they tap for an insane amount. You are not hampered, you're messing with everyone else, and this card helps you flip it. I love it so much. Next we have a cute card, Lost in the Woods, 3 green for an enchantment. Whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a forest card, most of them are forest cards, remove that creature from combat, then put the revealed card at the bottom of your library. So in the late game, this can blank your opponent's attacks and then shuffle those forests to the bottom of your library so you actually draw a real card, which actually sounds really good. You're blanking attacks, putting forests to the bottom, and then maybe getting something relevant later in the game. I'm all about Lost in the Woods. And then finally, if you need to interact with your opponents, let's make sure that we have some form of board control. I'm thinking Wave of Vitriol. 5 green for a sorcery, each player sacrifices all artifacts, enchantments, and non-basic lands he or she controls. For each land sacrifices away, search up a basic, and put it on the battlefield tapped. Oh my gosh, it's great just wiping the board of all artifacts and enchantments, but some decks will just fold to having all their non-basics erased. That's the advantage of you playing all forests. You play this card, you get rid of a stupid Journeyer's Kite or something, and then you watch your opponents weep into their playmats. Okay. We've talked a lot about getting mana, flipping our commander. Let's pretend that we've done it. We've done it, we've flipped it, we suddenly have 30, 40, 50 mana. If we have nowhere to put it, then we have not won the game. We need places to put this mana. Okay, one of the best things that we can do is just end the game with a single spell. I'm thinking Hurricane, Squall Line. If you have more life than they do, and you can just pump all your mana into this, you just end the game and win. So these are going to be strong cards. I also want to mention Rude Awakening at the beginning of this section because it turns into a huge ritual effect. Remember, we're tapping all of our lands for like 50 mana. Then Rude Awakening has us go down to 45 mana, and then we untap all the lands we control, and then tap them all again. So we basically double our mana when we're dealing with huge numbers like we are. So Rude Awakening is this crazy ritual, and sometimes it can turn all of our lands into 2/2s and get in there for some damage. I honestly think that one of the best things that you can do in this deck is just Genesis Wave for the whole thing. We can produce 70, 80 mana. We can Genesis Wave for our entire deck. Just take the whole commander deck, just turn it straight upside down, and then just spread it out. Just spread it out all over your playmat and see if you've won the game. Now, the thing that sucks is that most of the time you haven't won the game unless you include some way to facilitate that. The most common ways are Haste, Akroma's Memorial, and Concordant Crossroads. But Akroma's Memorial, 20 bucks, Concordant Crossroads, 15. Yeah, not an easy include. So we might need to be very wary of playing Genesis Wave for an entire library unless we have some way to close it out. And that's why I've included a card like Embodiment of Insight. Just imagine we turn over 50 cards, and Embodiment of Insight just happens to be in there. Suddenly, we have all of these landfall triggers, and we have a bunch of 3/3s with Haste and Vigilance. Yeah, suddenly half of our mana base being able to attack, that's 60 damage. Yeah, that's enough to close out a game. We also have cards like Waker of the Wilds. Remember, if we put all of those lands on the battlefield, each one of them is going to be tapping for 30, 40 mana. We're talking about ridiculous amounts of mana, and so Walker of the Woods could basically turn those lands into 30/30s. So we could just generate a couple 30/30s, you know what I mean, casually, and then just swing in and smash people. And of course, if we're messing around with lands, Kamal Fist of Krosa is amazing. $6.50, it's pushing the budget, but it's a great include because it does so many things. It can animate lands to be able to attack with them. And when we have enough mana and we have enough lands, yeah, why not weaponize them? We have 40 something in the deck. But most importantly, when we have lots and lots of mana, we can use this pump ability. It has an overrun built onto Kamal. 2 green, 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 creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn. Yeah, you can do that over and over and over and over again, and suddenly your wimpy little creatures are just trampling over for the victory. Kamal also has the added benefit of animating your opponent's lands in response to a board wipe. Oh, you're gonna board wipe? Sure, I'm gonna turn 5 of your lands into 1/1s and watch you cry as they go into your graveyard. And by the way, if we're going to go a little bit heavier into this land strategy, we've already talked about Rude Awakening. It has a secret second mode of turning your lands into 2/2s, and we can include a card like Sylvan Advocate, which buffs all of your lands. It's kind of a cool sub-theme that could work really well in this deck. Kamal is one of the most efficient ways to pump your team, but it's not the only way. Nylea, God of the Hunt, is also an expensive card, pushing $6.50, but it does something similar. It gives your creatures trample. That's huge, okay? It also gives them +2/+2 for 4 mana. I know you were looking at 5 mana for +3/+3 and trample to your whole team, but trust me, when you have enough mana like we're gonna have, 40, 50, 60 mana, yeah, you don't care how you do it. You just need more abilities for you to activate, and Nylea, God of the Hunt is great. If you want a different version, Elder of Laurels can come down and again, without tapping, without anything, sink the mana in to make creatures big. But no trample, so even though Elder of Laurels is very inexpensive, I put Nylea into my budget. Now let's talk about some non-bows with Genesis Wave. I'm thinking of Genesis Hydra. Pump a bunch of mana into this Hydra, get something else, and get a big dude. You know what? Hydras are actually pretty strong. Polukranos. Pump an insane amount of mana into Polukranos, then fight your opponent's blockers, swing in for the win. It happens all the time. Another card that could be similar to this would be Walking Ballista. This lets you bypass that whole combat step and just pump a bunch of mana into it and then just ping your opponents directly to their deaths. I also like it because you can reload Walking Ballista turn after turn by just paying 4 mana to do 1 damage. And yeah, you'll have that much mana. So that's great. There are other creatures that can be pumped up really efficiently. Hero's Bane doubles every time you put 2 green into it, making it gigantic. Chameleon Colossus can also double its power over and over and over again with this amazing activated ability. Neither one of these have a tap on it, so you just can keep going and going and going. Unfortunately, neither one of these have trample on it either, so there we go. We can also go wide after we go tall with Hooded Hydra, getting a bunch of sneaky snakes when this boy dies, and then Hangerback Walker out of the budget $11 does something similar. One thing to note is that these Hydras with X in their casting cost are awful with Genesis Wave because they come onto the battlefield, you've paid nothing for their X, and suddenly they just die immediately. So that's a little bit of a sad moment there. But do you know what, if you liked the idea of pumping a bunch of mana into Hooded Hydra and getting a bunch of snakes, then you will certainly like the next 2 cards, Gelatinous Genesis and Hydra Broodmaster. Put X, green Hydras or Oozes onto the battlefield. X, X's. Again, we're talking about crazy amounts of mana. We have 50 mana. Let's do 51 mana. Then we're getting 25, 25, 25s onto the battlefield. Oh, yeah, that's insane. And 50 mana is not that ridiculous. Remember, with 7 lands on the battlefield, it produces 49 mana. You get 7 lands. Do your Commander games end before turn 7? Yeah, I don't think so. We can also flood the board in a more traditional way. Ant Queen, Centaur, Glade, Orochi Hatchery, vary on flavor, producing those snakes. Namada Grove Guardian, Jade Mage, Thundering Spineback, all of these have different rates for different things. I think I like Ant Queen the best, 2 mana for a 1/1. Orochi Hatchery is pretty good. Namada is the most expensive at $10, but all of these can find a space, and really, we don't need to think about how efficiently we're putting creatures on the battlefield when we have the stupid amounts of mana we end up having. And then finally, we have once-off effects to produce a bunch of mana. Sprout Swarm is an instant, we can keep convoking it over and over and over again. Wolfbriar Elemental comes down and makes all of the wolves. I've made like 60 wolves before. Yeah. Verderoth the Ancient again comes down and puts amazing amounts of Saprolings onto the battlefield. Again, like 40, 50, 60, 70. Yeah. So this deck is very linear. I think you've followed along. We have this amazing commander. We just have to jump through a few hoops to make sure that it flips. So what do? We get some lands into our hands, we cast our commander, and suddenly, boom, flippity dippity, and now we have unlimited mana. And then we play big spells, over the top abilities, really what Commander is all about, to crush everyone, and not just win. We're not talking about 40 damage, we're talking about 25, 25, 25s. Yeah, that's the type of damage we're talking about. We're talking about flipping over our entire deck onto the battlefield with an amazing Genesis Wave. We're talking about amounts of mana that are rarely seen outside of infinite combos. Yeah, this is a game changer. I think that you will enjoy playing Sasaya Orochi Ascendant because I know I've enjoyed it. If you want to check out my deck list, find out what cards I included on this budget, you can click on the link in the description. It'll take you to TCGplayer.com. My current list at the top is $100 and at the low is $33. I think with a few actual reasonable pickups, you can get this for $60. And that includes some of these $6 cards that I personally decided to include. This deck could easily be sub $50. And if you have a little bit of extra money and you want to get that great Sylvan Library, or maybe that scroll rack, then this deck will still only top out at a couple $100 and be really fun to play. Thanks for sponsoring Jumbo Commander, TCGplayer.com. And if you are a patron, the first thing I want to do is thank you patrons, but also I want to let you know that I'm going to be giving away a copy of this exact deck. I went on TCG Player, I clicked add to cart, I changed up a few cards, but this is going to be sent out to one of you in the month of November. So if you sign up right now at my Patreon, you'll have a chance to win this commander deck. Awesome, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure to hit me up in the comment section below on Twitter. Check me out on the Command Zone where I'm hosting with Josh. And really, I'm just excited to do this kind of stuff more and more. So I'll see you really soon with more Commander videos. Bye.